Hello, I'm Roberta Winters, President of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township. As you may know, in addition to helping people understand the voting process and getting ready for elections, the League also has a role in educating you, the public, about critical issues. More than a decade ago, the League completed studies on natural gas extraction from Marcellus Shale and also on pipelines. We adopted a position recognizing the economic impact while also recommending strongly that we have further work done regarding its impact on the environment and on public health. At that time, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network urged a moratorium on fracking. Needless to say, we know the path that many in Pennsylvania and our nation have chosen. Because of our infrastructure and location, southeastern Pennsylvania, including Delaware County, is often considered to be a hub for export and processing for the natural gas industry. This is risky business. Currently, there is a great deal of conversation about a location in New Jersey called Gibbstown. Today, I have with me Tracy Carluccio, Deputy Director of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, and as you will soon see, she is a strong, passionate, and experienced environmental advocate. It's a pleasure to see you again, Tracy, albeit remotely. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, Roberta. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting us to present today. Yes, I'm the Deputy Director of Delaware Riverkeeper Network. I've been with the organization since its founding about 3 decades ago, and I work on many environmental issues, watershed protection issues, natural gas, since fracking hit Pennsylvania in the late 2000s. And stormwater management, working with all of our programs as deputy director, we address issues that come up. We basically fight to defend the Delaware River. We will go after polluters. We have a litigation program when that's needed, but we also work intensely on trying to get good regulations and policies in place that will protect our environment and prevent harm rather than always trying to dig us out of a hole.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about Gibbstown?
Yes, so Gibbstown is, as you may know, across the river from Delaware County. And the red X is the location of the proposed Gibbstown liquefied natural gas export terminal. Delaware River Partners, who's a subsidiary of New Fortress Energy, wants to build a second dock at the Gibbstown Logistics Center, which is a deep water port terminal in Greenwich Township. That's Gloucester County, New Jersey, right on the Delaware River. They're not operating there yet. They do have one dock, but they're at this point not operating. The logistics center is directly across from Delaware County's Tinicum Township, and that's just over about a mile away and about 1.6 miles from the northern end of densely populated Chester. And as you know, that's an environmental justice community that already is experiencing the burden of a lot of environmental harms. And it's just, that's just downriver, as you can see Chester there. And then about 1.9 miles is the airport. The runway for Philadelphia is actually under a mile from a dock that would be built there for the export of LNG. And Philadelphia is about 15-minute drive north. So you can see here, to give you a little better idea of location, the star, which shows where the Gibbstown Logistics Center second dock would be built. And you can follow the red line out to what you can see there as the navigation channel. And the ships would depart from there, follow that path down the river, and then through the Delaware Bay and go onto the ocean to foreign ports. The plan for the export of LNG is to use the gas overseas in foreign ports. It will not in any way be used within the United States. So I think that gives you a little bit of a picture there, Roberta.
Well, why should this be on the radar of people who live in Delaware County?
Well, I think, the main thing is that this is part of a big plan. And Delaware County is square in the middle of it. To give you an idea of the supply chain, from fracked wells up in Pennsylvania's Marcellus Shale in Bradford County, where you see that that factory up at the top of your map at the right, is where New Fortress Energy wants to build a liquefaction plant from gas that would be harvested from gas wells in the region there. And then it would move from there by truck or by rail up to 200 miles of Pennsylvania and New Jersey communities to the proposed LNG terminal on the Delaware, which you see down at the bottom where that ship is. Now, one thing I think that's, and by the way, we have maps on Delaware Riverkeeper Network's website, which shows you through an interactive system exactly what communities it will go through, how close it will be, and who lives there. But I also want to show you this picture because it shows how Delaware County is directly in the path of the truck route. And whether or not they will be moving the liquefied natural gas by truck or by rail has not been decided. As a matter of fact, they are allowed under their permits to use both routes or either route. So the likely path that will be taken is the one that goes down 476, as you can see there. Then it makes a turn as it approaches the Chester area, going down 95, and then across the river at the Commodore Barry Bridge, and then over on smaller roads to the Gibbstown facility. So you can see here that Radnor Township is right there, you know, all the municipalities that it will go through. And by going to the interactive map, you can actually zoom in and see what the streets it'll actually go on. So the reason that it should be on your radar is because you're right in the middle of it.
Well, haven't they been transporting, you know, natural gas on trucks for decades and trains for decades? What's so different about this liquefied natural gas? Isn't it just like what people use in their house?
No, it's not. They don't use liquefied natural gas in your home. Liquefied natural gas has been reduced down about 600 times, and it's a cryogenically, that is super cooled liquid made from basically pure methane. And this is not what we use in our homes. We use natural gas that's a gas. It has been moved in small amounts by trucks for many years, but never has it been moved in this quantity. And as we go forward, I'll show you what the quantities are. As far as rail is concerned, which also will go through Philadelphia and come down the Delaware River and also have an effect because Delaware County is right across the river, has never been used. Rail cars have never been used for moving liquefied natural gas. As a matter of fact, it has been banned in the United States because of safety concerns. And there is a special permit that was applied for by New Fortress Energy's subsidiary that granted them the ability to move liquefied natural gas in rail cars from Wyalusing, Pennsylvania, up there in Bradford County, all the way to Gibbstown. And doing that will be basically undoing the ban through a special permit. And it will be the first time that this length, that any rail cars have been used and that this length of railway will be subject to this new movement of liquefied natural gas.
So thanks for letting us know about this liquefied natural gas and how, you know, it's super cooled and under lots of pressure. So it's not the same as what we are usually dealing with around here, even with the Mariner pipelines. So should we be concerned about this?
Yes, and I think, you know, let's take a deeper dive into actually what LNG or liquefied natural gas is and what its hazards are that make it different from other hazardous materials that are currently being moved on our public highways and our railways. So as I said, it's basically refrigerated, supercooled methane. It is classified as hazardous and flammable, and it is cooled down to a lower temperature than any other gas or hazardous material that is moved by truck or rail. It's down to minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit. If it is released by, say, a puncture in a truck, it can't be controlled. It immediately, instantly moves out into the atmosphere. And as I mentioned, it's been reduced 600 times. So when it does that, the volume that was in that truck expands 600 times. So that means that there is a tremendous amount of energy in the cloud that results. So the cloud, which is called a vapor cloud, if it is released, is extremely cold. And what that means is that anybody within the vicinity pretty much instantly will most likely die, because the oxygen is robbed from the air, so they are asphyxiated, and the coldness basically freezes them. So within a quarter mile, it's usually deadly, but it also moves out to about a mile where very severe freeze burns can occur. Now, the vapor cloud warms up as it hits the atmosphere too. And if it reaches an ignition source, it causes a fire that is so hot that the emergency management guide from the United States for firemen says, just evacuate everybody and let it burn out, because you can't put it out. So just think about that for people who live in communities and the immediate effects on those who are next to the truck route or the rail route. The other thing that's very scary and is a recognized safety hazard by the federal government and other agencies is that LNG can also explode. And when it explodes, because all that energy that I talked about is in the cloud, it actually has the force of what's called a thermobaric bomb. And that is basically a very powerful bomb. And one of the problems with this is that our emergency responders, our fire companies, they've never experienced this before. They're going to have these trucks of LNG moving down the Blue Route, moving on 95, moving through Chester and into Gibbstown and through all the communities in Pennsylvania up to Wyalusing, and then through other communities that are nearby for the rail and the alternative truck route. And these communities are not prepared to respond properly. As a matter of fact, there was a terrible accident in China about 3 weeks ago where many people were killed because they just could not respond quick enough and get people out of the way. Also, there was a recent accident in the northwest of the United States, and the fire companies what they did is just remove everybody within 2 miles because they wanted to make sure that they could get as quickly as possible people out of harm's way. So the other thing about this is that the public safety of actually traveling by truck or rail, particularly in these amounts, has not been studied. There has not been what's called a quantitative risk assessment or a risk assessment that does a thorough traffic study of any of these routes that go through to Gibbstown. And there also has not been an analysis under federal agencies of the Gibbstown site itself and what the public safety hazards would be should there be an accident and a release at the site. And so this is a grave concern, and we believe that this is enough that should stop this project. However, we are challenging the project through all the permits that have been granted so far. The major permits are from the Army Corps of Engineers, the Delaware River Basin Commission, and New Jersey DEP. We are in court fighting all of them, but so far we have not been able to get an injunction to actually stop it. And we can talk a little bit about that at the end if you'd like. The other just quick mention is that there's a lot of secrecy that comes with this whole industry. And for instance, Delaware Riverkeeper Network filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, who gave that special permit for the rail, to find out some basics about what they've done since they received the permit. And we filed it in April, and we still don't have a response. And one of the reasons is they told us is because they've sent a request to Delaware River Partners to, and Energy Transport Solutions, which is the subsidiary that's actually moving the gas on the rail, and they're going to decide whether or not we get the information.
I was going to ask you, is this like, one truck a day, or is this going to be lots of trucks and lots of trains?
I want to show you in answering that, Roberta, this is what an explosion looks like. This is one tank car of liquefied petroleum gas, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And over to the right are 2 trucks of liquefied natural gas. So I just wanted to show that. But in terms of, what, I'm sorry, what was your question, Roberta?
Okay, like how many trucks and how many
Oh.
train cars will this take? I mean, is this like 1 a day or 10 a day or?
Yeah, no, in order to meet what they have promised at Delaware River Partners in terms of how much gas they want to actually export, which is about 5 million gallons a day, they need to bring in up to 1,650 trucks every day to Gibbstown. Now, some of those trucks will carry natural gas liquids. And I wanted to bring up that, and that's why I have this picture on the left of the LPG, because natural gas liquids, which are the liquids that are leaving, for instance, from the going through the Mariner East pipeline and leaving from Marcus Hook at the facility there, are mainly butane and propane, and they are going to also be handling those at the Gibbstown facility, especially at Dock 1. Now that was always a plan, but it was supposed to be a small part of the plan. They said it was mainly going to be refrigerated goods and roll on and roll off cars and that sort of thing. But at this point, the liquefied gases that are going to be brought in by truck add up through both the natural gas liquids and LNG to be 1,650 truck trips per day. So this is an absolutely enormous change in terms of the hazardous material traffic on public highways and the railway.
Thanks.
So I just, Roberta, one other thing that I wanted to mention is that these hazards are particularly a problem at the Gibbstown facility and, all the communities in the region because of these huge ships that are going to be taking this out. Now, these ships are carrying LNG, liquefied natural gas, and they're going to be passing by communities all the way from Gibbstown all the way out through the bay and into the ocean. And the federal government says that the facilities themselves, like where this would be loaded at the Gibbstown site, should be remotely sited, but this isn't remotely sited. Everybody within about 3.5 miles is at risk of feeling the impacts should there be a problem, either on a ship or at the facility itself or from a truck or rail transport. And so that means that they're really planning to do this in populated areas, particularly Chester, which is right there. And they'll be sailing past Wilmington, they'll be sailing past Bayshore communities on both New Jersey and Pennsylvania side, and then they'll be going overseas for sale. But I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that the reason the Gibbstown facility activities are so dangerous is because they're not going to be storing the LNG there. They're going to be bringing these trucks in that we talked about, and these rail cars, which will be up to 100 rail cars per day, 100 of each of them, up to 2 of them every day. They're going to be bringing them in and directly transloading from these trucks and or rail cars onto the ships because they wanted to escape, and this is something Delaware River Partners and New Fortress Energy does, it seems, through every step of the process here. They wanted to avoid Federal Energy Regulatory Commission jurisdiction. Now that agency, tends to rubber stamp most of the applications that come into it, but they do have a requirement for looking at some of the safety hazards associated with liquefied natural gas, and we didn't get that on this site because they escaped it through this scheme of directly loading. The industry says that the most dangerous part of handling LNG is loading it, transloading it from containers onto ships. So whether it's a tank on a ocean front or whether it's trucks or rail cars, you want to minimize that. And as a matter of fact, these big facilities like on the Gulf Coast, they move it from the tanks into the ships in 1 day in order to minimize that danger. It will take 2 weeks to load one ship with the trucks and the rail cars that come in. So we're facing basically a Rube Goldberg kind of situation here, just because Delaware River Partners didn't want to go through the proper regulatory and safety hazard analyses that maybe would have slowed them down or perhaps made it more expensive for them.
Is there anything we can do about this, Tracy?
Absolutely. There's a lot going on, and this project is far from being built. Now, the Delaware River Basin Commission is the agency I mentioned earlier, who has sort of the penultimate regional permit for this project. And we did appeal their approval, which was given a year ago in June of 2019. And we went through a hearing process with a hearing officer that went on for 9 days. And the hearing officer was reviewing our petition in order to stop the approval of the project. Without that, it couldn't be built at all. And we had our opportunity to put experts on the stand. Delaware River Partners also got to put their experts on the stand. And the result of that is a report. Now that report goes to the Delaware River Basin Commissioners. Those commissioners are the governors of the 4 states that flow to the Delaware. So that's Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Delaware, and a representative of the Army Corps of Engineers. They vote on the recommendation that's made by the hearing officer after this process that we've just completed. We don't know when that vote will be, but the hearing officer recommended that the project go ahead as approved, and the commissioners now are at the point of reviewing all of the record that was produced, and they'll be deciding whether or not to allow the project to go ahead. That's why we have a petition. And it is really important for people to share this petition link. And perhaps afterwards, Roberta, we can share electronically some of these hyperlinks so it's easy for people. But all you do is click on that hyperlink, and you can tell the Delaware River Basin Commission to listen to the people and the public that's going to be affected by this project. Look at it from a public safety point of view, which the Delaware River Basin Commission did not include at all. They did not allow that to be brought up. So it's really important that we speak directly to the commissioners, because they don't have to accept the hearing officer's recommendation. They can reject it. They can require more safety studies. There's various things they can do. So we want the people to speak directly to the governors, who of course are elected officials, and we're their constituents. We also have a municipal resolution campaign, Roberta, which I think, anybody in Delaware County who is now, knows about this and is concerned. We have a resolution that's being taken by people who live along the transportation route to their local governments, municipalities as well as counties, in order to ask them to pass this resolution, which is then submitted to the governor of the state, and then also to the Delaware River Basin Commission, saying this is ridiculously unsafe. We've got to stop this. And it's a well-prepared resolution. It's ready to go. And Lehigh County Board of Commissioners, for instance, just passed it. Another town in Pennsylvania, Kutztown, has just passed it. And there are 21 different communities in New Jersey and Pennsylvania where people are going to their own councils and asking for this. So we have that available as well. We also do educational webinars, and we'd love anybody to join. You've done a great service by educating and sharing this information here today. The webinars delve into it in a little more detail. The next one we have is next Thursday at 2 o'clock, and that one will look at the connection to Ireland, where New Fortress Energy is trying to get approval to build an import terminal for the gas from Gibbstown. And 2 weeks ago, we had Puerto Rico on, for instance, because people who are fighting it in Puerto Rico discussed what they're doing to try to replace dirty energy with clean energy, and their legal and public policy fight against New Fortress Energy, bringing the Gibbstown and Pennsylvania gas liquefied by ship into Puerto Rico. And there's other countries that New Fortress Energy is trying to bring it to as well.
So these webinars that you've done that are so informative, how do people get involved in those? Can we go to the website for the Delaware Riverkeeper and get a link to go back and look at those?
That's right. Right on our homepage, you'll see the one that's coming up, and that it'll say the Ireland connection. And if you click on that, it gives you a registration link, just like you do for League of Women Voters seminars, and also links to all of the recordings of all the past webinars. So those are available, and they're really compelling. And we also explain, for instance, how to use the interactive map, which shows that more people of color and low-income people are affected in these regions that it'll pass through. And it's very, very interesting and very disturbing to look at these population impacts. Also, there's the resolution campaign is explained. And so there's a lot of tools that are also shared through the webinars.
Well, let me just try to recap to make sure I've got this straight. Is that okay, Tracy?
Please do.
Okay, so this new Fortress Energy has decided to put in a deep water port with 2 piers to export some of our natural gas products that come from Pennsylvania. One is the one that we currently have being sent out through Marcus Hook, which is the butane, ethane, propane that comes through the Mariner pipeline. This is not what they're going to be, this is what they do on one of the small piers, correct? They're
That's right.
trying to build a bigger pier now that'll take all of the liquefied natural gas from Bradford, Pennsylvania, in that area up north. And because we don't have pipelines, they're going to be shipping that through trucks up to 1,000 a day, you said? And also
Yes.
rail cars, which could also deliver it. And these trucks, which will be carrying this highly flammable, hazardous material that would freeze people within a quarter of a mile of it if it explodes or whatever, or start a huge fire if it's with a source of ignition. And one of the things I found out when I did a lot of stuff with natural gas before is sources of ignitions can be something as simple as turning on your cell phone or starting a car.
Exactly.
So it doesn't mean like you're running into a forest fire. It could be something small, like, a lawnmower. So
Exactly.
these are things that could cause a serious problem. And we don't have a lot of experience with this because in Pennsylvania or in this country, this is the first time they've been using these special tank cars on trains to do this. And they haven't done this in quantity with trucks like this before either, I don't believe. So we're sort of like the canary in the mine shaft, so to say, is to see what's going to happen here. And I don't think any of us will feel terribly comfortable until we have that, as you said, that public safety analysis to find out exactly what's going to happen. The other thing you mentioned, Tracy, as I recall, is that this is going to be going through highly populated areas like Delaware County. And you can see 476 goes through Radnor, Swarthmore, right down through Media, right into Chester, which is already an environmental justice zone. And so that's one of the things we know from our work with natural gas is that you want to do as much of this in remote areas rather than highly populated areas. So, and then the other thing that I think is interesting is that when it's transported, it's going to go also through highly populated areas down the Delaware River. And we have a bridge going over it, and I think sometimes when there are bridges going over these bridges, there may have to be some accommodations. So perhaps the bridge might have to be even closed when it's going past.
Yes, most likely.
Because they don't want any problems. So this is really a challenge for those of us who live in Delaware County and care about things that might be putting our children and our grandchildren at risk. One of the other things I want to mention, though, Tracy, that I don't think you went into at all is that Gibbstown isn't like a pristine wildlife area. Gibbstown itself has a history. Do you want to just talk a little bit about the Gibbstown history? Because, a lot of us like to think, well, places that are, maybe have been dumps for things before, maybe we can repurpose them and recycle them and put them to good use. So can you tell us a little bit about Gibbstown besides?
Sure. Yeah, the area there, Greenwich Township, where Gibbstown is located, is actually at this point one of the greenest spots you can see if you look at it on Google. And it's a mixed situation there. It was used, the property, about 1,600 acres, by DuPont for over 100 years to manufacture munitions. So because of that, there actually is a lot of contamination on the site that is undergoing renovation, remediation, and we've made that an important legal point because we believe that they are going to be jeopardizing and moving around some of the highly toxic materials that are in the groundwater at that site, such as aniline, nitrobenzene, ingredients for making munitions. But because the site has not been used for anything for over 2 decades, and there has been some small activity there up until about 15 years ago, but it really shut down big time in the 80s. And as a result of that, the area returned in large part to a natural area. And there are birds and wildlife that use the area. They actually found species of salamander that don't exist other places. It is really a treasure trove of a quiet, appealing location. And there is a really nice park, which you can get to in Greenwich Township that is actually less than a mile from the site because it joins it just to the south. And when you go there, you don't know. I mean, you can see, down the river, the Commodore Barry Bridge, and you can see, different industrial activity across the river. But it has a certain feeling of, being in a quiet, removed place. And I know that people appreciate that. We've been told that from the people from Gibbstown, that they can go over there and forget the world. And you wouldn't believe that there was giant highways and all sorts of other things going on, because you can actually hear the birds and you can, hear the river lapping on the edge of the shore. And it's really a beautiful, sort of a sanctuary type of place. And that will be totally disturbed. You will see the dock. You will see the ships coming in and out. You will hear the noise. There will have to be a flare on site, which there already is a small one. They will have to have a big flare on site for methane that's burned off. So there's a lot of impacts that are going to totally disturb and ruin what is now sort of a healed natural location.
Well, thanks, Tracy. I appreciate you informing the public about that. So we're not only concerned about our safety and the river, but also about the disturbing of what may be a sanctuary place for some.
That's right. And Roberta, one other thing I would like to mention is that the reason they're not constructing the dock right now, even though they got approval from the agencies that we're appealing the permits from, is because of the Atlantic sturgeon and the short-nosed sturgeon. And they're known to use the area there. And as a result, the Army Corps of Engineers put a prohibition on any disturbance in the water between March 15th and September 15th. In order to protect the Atlantic sturgeon's use of the area. So that's a federally endangered, both of those are federally endangered species. And this is a special area that they use in order to be able to procreate and thrive. And that will also be disturbed by the operation, as well as during this sensitive time when they are reproducing. Unfortunately, that'll get lifted on September 14th. We hope to get an injunction before that happens.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy, and for giving us this good information so we who are concerned about our public health and safety, air quality is another thing we need to be thinking about, and the natural world as well. So I really appreciate you coming, and on behalf of the Delaware County Interleague organization that coordinates all the activities of leagues throughout this area, we are most grateful for you for joining us today. We have learned much, and we are want to be most grateful to our tech team who has made this possible. Although we're sorry we had a little bit of streaming difficulties, we know all of you who want to see this will be able to get the YouTube link and watch it at your leisure whenever you eat your lunch. So thanks to you, and we hope you can view this again and again and share it with your neighbors and your family and friends, and get these sites that have been shown at the conclusion of our presentation so that you in fact can have a voice in what is happening in your neighborhoods and in our communities. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. We appreciate being hosted by the League of Women Voters. Thank you from Delaware Riverkeeper Network.